I tried putting some glitter on my eyelids, just like I do every carnival, and it just got all over the place. Just like it does every carnival. Every... It's also very fucking hot today, so I'm sweating buckets, which is why I look kind of shiny, I guess. It's no highlighter. I mean, it's nature's highlighter. I'm sweating. So yeah, if I start literally dripping throughout the video, just pretend you're not seeing anything. I'm also wearing some indigenous jewelry from Brazilian communities from the place where my mom was traveling to. She literally just got here and gave me these. As Brazilian as it gets. Well, hello there, welcome back. If you couldn't tell by the very convoluted intro, today we're talking about Brazilian things. More specifically, we are talking about Brazilian books. This is my second video talking about Brazilian books. The first one I did last year during Latinx Heritage Month in the US. And as always, it's gonna be linked up above and down below in case you want to check it out. I, of course, highly recommend it, all modesty aside. Today's video, though, is gonna be a bit different from that one because it's going to be divided into 3 sections. The first section is going to be books that were written in Brazilian Portuguese and first published in Brazil and then translated into English. Because again, it's very important to me and it means a lot to me to be able to bring Brazilian books to a wider, different audience. Then we get into the second section, which is going to be books that were written by authors who were born in Brazil, but they were written in English already. And for those, obviously, there was no translating involved because the authors wrote them in English. Lastly, we're going to talk about books that were written by Brazilian Americans and also some books that I haven't read yet, but they are on my radar. So in case you were looking for some other Brazilian things to read, those could work for you. Just like last year, however, this is more so a wrap-up of some Brazilian books that I've read recently rather than a recommendations video in the sense that I adored everything that I read. Some of these books were just okay to me, some of them I flat out didn't like, but you know, I'm not the judge of anything, so maybe something that didn't work for me might work for you, which is why I want to talk about them. So without any further ado, let's just get into the books. To start off with the translated works, we have Barba Ensopada de Sangue, or in English, Blood-drenched Beard. I had to say that very slowly because otherwise I wouldn't be able to get it out. This was written by Daniel Galera and was translated by Alison Entrekin. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. This is a literary fiction novel that follows an unnamed main character. The main character's father, before committing suicide, told him about his own father's death, so the main character's grandfather. And what he told our main character was not something that everyone knew, so he basically told him the actual truth behind his grandfather's death. And apparently the old man had been murdered by fellow villagers in Garopaba in almost an execution, you know, vigilante style. For context, the south of Brazil is made up of 3 states. You have Paraná at the very top, then Santa Catarina in the middle, which was where I was raised in. And then at the very bottom you have Rio Grande do Sul. Garopaba is a coastal town in Santa Catarina, the middle state. And the main character is from Porto Alegre, which is the capital of the bottommost state, Rio Grande do Sul. So after his father's death, the main character, who has no strong ties to home or his family, decides to take his deceased father's old dog and go to Garopaba looking for answers regarding his grandfather's murder. However, things get quite complicated by the fact that the main character suffers from an affliction. I believe it's a neurological disorder that makes him incapable of remembering faces. And there's also the fact that Garopaba is a small town filled with superstitions and urban legends. And all the people who knew his grandfather seem fearful and even haunted, and they are certainly unwilling to share any information with him. I'm gonna be very honest with you, I didn't really like this book. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way the book was marketed versus what the book actually was. Because, you know, from the synopsis I just told you, you would think that this is kind of a thriller-esque novel and that the murder of this grandfather would be the plot of the book, right? Like finding out information about the death and angering the villagers and all that. But that's not really what the book is about. The book is a lot more about the main character and his day-to-day life, as well as his interpersonal relationships with the people from the town, which usually I'd be all for. I really like books like that, but something about this book just didn't work for me, and I think a lot of it has to do with the writing and the fact that I was unable to really connect with the main character. The murder barely matters at all in the book, really, and there's barely any plot as well, which again is something that usually doesn't bother me, but in this case, because I didn't connect with the main character, it really slowed things down. This is a very slow book. I would say that it's good representation on what everyday life in a small coastal town in the south of Brazil is, as well as this certain animosity that exists between Catarinenses, the people from Santa Catarina, and Gaúchos, the people from Rio Grande do Sul. The representation for those aspects was very spot on. The book does a great job of conveying the lazy days and the character's routine in Garopaba, as well as the plethora of people who passed through his life while he's living there, including three relationships that he got himself into while living there. There's this very interesting atmosphere in the book that is at times languid and at other times very tension-filled. The book has many strong moments. I just think that there was a lot that could be taken out of it. I understand what the author was going for, but at the same time, I think the same thing could have been conveyed in a lot less pages. I think the book could and probably should have used a lot more editing. I was left just feeling very bored throughout the entire thing. Some stylistic choices are that the dialogue isn't marked, like it's not in quotations. The character is unnamed, as I mentioned before, and there are plenty of, I forgot what they are called in English, notas de rodapé. I'm gonna insert the translation here, but there are plenty of those in the book. They are interesting because they are usually scenes that took place without the main character in them, and since the book is told from his point of view, then these notes are the only way for us to see those scenes. Sometimes they are scenes that happen without the main character, or phone calls, or emails, or letters, you know, stuff like that. In the end, this book was definitely not for me, but it could be for you, who knows? It is for a lot of people, considering that the average rating it has on Goodreads is 4.07, and I ended up giving Blood-drenched Beard 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next, we have Diário da Queda, or Diary of the Fall. This was written by Michelle Lauby and translated by Margaret Jo Costa. So hard to say a Portuguese word in the middle of an English sentence. This is also literary fiction. There's gonna be a few of those in this list. This is a book about memory and intergenerational trauma and how the things that happen before us end up influencing our lives and the people we become, as well as guilt and the complicated legacy of history and what it means to be Jewish in the 21st century, in this case more specifically in Brazil. The author himself is of Jewish descent, and lots of things in the book are inspired by things that happen in his life. But the book in and of itself is not autobiographical. It follows 3 generations of Jewish men from the same family. And he talks about how they and their choices ended up impacting and influencing one another's lives. And all of that with the theme of memory at its center, as well as how important memory is to being Jewish. The book is the main character's diary, which is writing to examine the mistakes of his past in regards to himself and his family and his friends and his Jewishness. And it has a specific event at the center of it that he keeps coming back to, because that event ended up teaching him a whole lot about lots of things. I'm being very cryptic, oh my god. The synopsis says, at the narrator's elite Jewish school in a posh suburb of Porto Alegre, a cruel prank leaves the only Gentile student there terribly injured. Years later, he relives the episode as he examines the mistakes of his past and struggles for forgiveness. His father, who has Alzheimer's, obsessively records every memory that comes to his mind, and his grandfather, who survived Auschwitz, fills notebook after notebook with the false memories of someone desperate to forget. plot. So all three of the men at the center of the story had journals of some sort. Some specific stylistic choices of this book are that it's written in vignettes, it's the main character's diary, and again the narrator / main character is unnamed. This was my second time reading this book, and oh my god, it is fantastic. Definitely one of my favorite books that I read for this video, but also one of my favorite books, period. It is so fucking good, it's incredible, and it's so well written. I gave Diary of the Fool 5 out of 5 stars. Then we have Ideias para Adiar o Fim do Mundo, or in English, Ideas to Postpone the End of the World. This is by Ailton Krenak and was translated by Anthony Doyle. This is non-fiction, and the book is made up of 3 lectures by Indigenous activist, leader, philosopher, and writer Ailton Krenak of the Krenak ethnicity. And the book is an appeal to save the planet and to re-examine and change our idea of what it is to be human and of humanity and our place in this world. I'm gonna read again the synopsis on Goodreads. Ailton Krenak argues that the current environmental crisis is rooted in modern society's flawed concept of humanity. That human beings are superior to any other form of nature and therefore justified to exploit it as we please. As a result, our entire civilization is built upon structures, organizations, and institutions that alienate us from the land, rivers, and trees, and that have forced the marginalization and sometimes outright elimination of any community that refuses to abide by these rules. Indigenous peoples throughout the Americas have already faced the end of the world many times before. Now, to stop our collective march towards the abyss, we must reject the homogenizing effect of a human-first perspective and embrace a new idea of dreaming, one that allows us to regain our proper place within nature. Only then may we find new solutions to survive. Krenak's writing is extremely accessible and also very beautiful, in my opinion. My ebook is highlighted all over. This is an incredible, very short and easy read, but it's also packed with thought-provoking and important conversations. And I gave Ideas to Postpone the End of the World 5 out of 5 stars. Then we have 15 Dias, or Here the Whole Time in English. No, that is not a direct translation. 15 Dias actually means 15 days, but yeah, it's the original name of the book. Here the Whole Time was written by Vitor Martins and was translated by Larissa Lena. And this is a YA contemporary. I think it's the only YA contemporary in this section of the video. The opening line of the book is, I am fat. I'm not chubby or husky or big boned. I'm heavy, I take up space, and people look at me funny on the street. This is our main character, 17-year-old Felipe. He's a fat gay kid who's relentlessly bullied in school, which is the biggest reason why he's so happy and relieved for school break, when he's gonna be left alone with his thoughts, his books, and his Netflix account. However, everything changes when Felipe's mom tells him that Caio, the neighbor boy he's had a crush on forever, is gonna spend the next 15 days with them while his parents are traveling. So essentially, this is a YA love story between 2 boys who must spend 15 days with each other over school break. The book balances themes of body shaming, fatphobia, both internalized or not, and homophobia, with the cuteness and the lightness of a first crush and new friendships, as well as learning to accept yourself. I really appreciated the loving relationship between Felipe and his mother. The 2 of them are very close and they are very caring and very openly affectionate. And I also really appreciated the on-page representation of therapy and the importance of it, as well as having one character who ends up deciding not to get married yet. The writing can get quite cringy and childish at times, but I feel like it's in a way that's very true to being a teenager, if you know what I mean. There are some experiences that are very much Brazilian experiences, but it also shows how some of the trials of being a teenager are quite universal. So yeah, it's a cute coming-of-age story that takes place over 15 days, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And the last book in this section is Symphony em Branco, or Symphony in White. This was written by Adriana Lisboa and was translated by Sarah Green. And this is another literary fiction. We mostly follow 3 main characters who are deeply interconnected. We have Clarice and Maria Inês, who are sisters, and we also have Tomás, who used to be romantically involved with Maria Inês and now is friends with Clarice. I would say most of it is focused on Maria Inês and Clarice. The two of them were mostly raised in the countryside of Rio de Janeiro, the state, not the city. And the book really is an exploration of how this one specific and traumatizing event of their childhood ended up heavily impacting and influencing the trajectory of their lives. I forgot to say before, but I'm gonna leave all the trigger warnings that I could think of for all of these books in the description down below. But for this one, I feel forced to say in the video, heavy trigger warning for child abuse, and more specifically, sexual child abuse. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and this was my second time reading it. It's really fucking fantastic. The book doesn't really follow a linear timeline. We mostly go all over the place in the timeline. Like, you go forward a few years, then you go back a bunch, then you go forward again, and so on and so forth. There is some very vivid imagery and some amazing metaphors and amazing use of language, as well as the use of repetition throughout the entire story. This book is fantastic. This was my second time reading it, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. It's very heavy though, so go into it prepared. Its exploration of trauma and abuse and how everything has a consequence is amazing. It's honestly amazing and breathtaking. I adore the three main characters. They are not the best people, to be quite honest with you, but they are amazing characters. They are extremely flawed, and they definitely don't always make the best choices, and they definitely don't always have other people's best interests in mind, but they are so human and just so complex, and I feel so much for them. And also, I forgot to say, one of the timelines in the book is present day, when Maria Inês is returning to the city she grew up in. Clarice and Tomás are still living in the city, and Maria Inês is going over there for the first time in years with her daughter Eduarda. So this is gonna be her first time in a long time reuniting with Clarice and Tomás, and specifically Tomás. I feel like she hasn't seen him in longer. But anyway, I gave Symphony in White by Adriana Lisboa 5 out of 5 stars. It's fantastic and I highly recommend it. Now we get to the second section of the video, books that were written by Brazilian authors in English. And first we have a new all-time favorite of mine, The Air You Breathe by Francis de Pontes Peebles. Even though this was written originally in English, it follows Brazilian characters and mostly takes place in Brazil. It follows two Brazilian women, Maria das Graças and Maria das Dores, or for short, Graça and Dor. The two of them meet in the 1930s or 1920s, I'm not quite sure. I know they were born in the 20s, but they meet when they're kids. Dor is part of the help in this huge house in a sugar plantation. I believe she was the daughter of a formerly enslaved woman. Her mother used to work in the sugar plantation, but she died in childbirth, and Dor was then kind of adopted. She was taken in by the kitchen woman, who was a formerly enslaved woman. I'm having a hard time explaining this book. I feel like I'm not doing it justice. I'm just gonna read this to you. I know I've done this a lot in this video. I am so sorry. I hope this isn't boring. I have to work with what I have. The story of an intense female friendship fueled by affection, envy and pride, and each woman's fear that she would be nothing without the other. Some friendships, like romance, have the feeling of fate. Skinny 9-year-old orphan Doris is working in the kitchen of a sugar plantation in 1930s Brazil, when in walks a girl who changes everything. Graça, the spoiled daughter of a wealthy sugar baron, is clever, well-fed, pretty and thrillingly ill-behaved. Born to wildly different worlds, Doris and Graça quickly bond over shared mischief, and then, on a deeper level, over music. One has a voice like a songbird, the other feels melodies in her soul and composes lyrics to match. Music will become the shared passion, the source of their partnership and their rivalry, and for each, the only way out of the life to which each was born. But only one of the two is destined to be a star. The intimate, volatile bond would determine each of the fortunes and haunt their memories. Traveling from Brazil's inland sugar plantations to the rowdy streets of Rio de Janeiro's famous Lapa neighborhood, from Los Angeles during the golden age of Hollywood back to the irresistible drumbeat of home, the air you breathe unfolds a moving portrait of a lifelong friendship, its unparalleled rewards and lasting losses, and considers what we owe to the relationships that shape our lives. This book's exploration of friendships and relationships and romantic love, as well as the way it talks about music, is just fantastic, and it is so fucking beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's gorgeously written. And I also really like how at the start of each part of the book we have the lyrics that the main characters composed, and they are always so good, and I really wish I could listen to that music. The dynamic between Doris and Graça and Vinicius, who is a character who shows up a bit later on in the book, is amazing. I'm honestly considering rereading this book soon and taking notes and all that, so that I can make a video review / in-depth discussion about it, because it is incredible. And I especially love the way that it talks about the history of these two women, as well as Vinicius, throughout many years, and how it interlaces the history of them with the history of Brazil and the culture of Brazil in specific parts of the country at specific times. It is so fucking good. I can't recommend this enough. If you can take only one recommendation from this book, let it be The Air You Breathe by Francis de Pontes Peebles. It's amazing. I listened to this on audio, and it was narrated by a Brazilian American audiobook narrator called Rebecca Mozo. She did an amazing job. Her pronunciation of Brazilian words wasn't always 100% correct, but it didn't really get me out of the book at any time. It was fantastic. She does an amazing job. The emotions that she's able to bring to her narration are amazing, and I teared up quite a few times in this book, not gonna lie. In case you didn't notice already, I highly recommend this book. It is so fucking incredible. I love it so much. And even though I only read it once up until this point, it's definitely already one of my favorite books of all time. And obviously I gave The Air You Breathe 5 out of 5 stars. Then we have Like a Love Song by Gabriela Martins. This is another YA contemporary, and it follows this girl called Natalia, who was born in Brazil and had to move to the US because of her mother's work when she was a kid. I believe she was 8, but I'm not quite sure. Moving there, she kind of lost touch with her Brazilian roots and culture because she had to heavily assimilate in order to actually get along with the kids in the school and be ingrained in American society. And while there, when she's a teenager, she becomes an international pop star. She becomes the singer Natalie. The book starts when she's about to receive an award of Artist of the Year, I believe, and a douchebag boyfriend decides that that's the perfect moment to dump her. And to make things worse, the film crew catches the entire thing on video. And because of that, Natalie ends up becoming a meme, which is a big Brazilian experience. Listen, Brazilians are the best meme makers in the entire world, and if you disagree with me on that, you were wrong and uninformed. Natalie's career takes quite a hit because of that entire situation, which is why she has to fake date someone. And that someone is British indie actor William Ainsley. I adored this book. I love William with my whole entire heart, and I want to protect Natalie forever from everything. The romance is fantastic. It's so fucking cute. The characters are also amazing. They are very complex, very well written, especially Natalie. Gabriela manages to write such an amazing exploration of identity through the character of Natalia. I'm honestly mind blown because the book really goes deep into matters of identity through Natalia's character. and her whole relationship with Brazil and with her family because of her moving to the US, how that affected her whole entire life. It's done in such a sensitive and sensible way. It's so respectful. The way Natalie changed her name, lost her accent, lost her connection to her family because she's afraid that they are going to think of her as nothing but an American. But she also recognizes how different and privileged her experience is because she lives in the US. And the pain that came from having to assimilate and lose this bit of herself, and also, how she had to change a lot of herself because she became a pop star. While at the same time really talking about how she loves music, and music is a very integral part of being Brazilian and a very important part of being Brazilian. Music was for a long time the only way Brazilians could protest and stand up for ourselves, because of the military dictatorship, which is something that was explored in The Air You Breathe, the book I talked about previously. I don't know, I really fucking love this book. I feel like I'm not being able to come up with the proper words to tell you how amazing it is, and every single topic that it explores, but rest assured, it's fucking good. I feel like the longer I go on filming, the more unable to express myself I get, so please bear with me. And I also gave Like a Love Song 5 out of 5 stars. Next in the session we have Idlewild by Jude Sierra. This is an adult male-male age gap romance. Full disclosure, Jude Sierra is a woman, but I did find quite a lot of reviews by queer men saying that they really adored the book and they thought it was done in a very good way. So, do with that information what you will. This one, even though it was written by a Brazilian author, has no Brazilian characters, but I feel like it's important for everyone to support Brazilian and Latinx authors in general, not only when we are talking about our Brazilian/Latinx experiences. This takes place in Detroit, and the city is very much a character in the book, which is something that I always find fantastic. And it follows Usher, a gay man in his 30s, I believe, who has a restaurant in Detroit. He lost his husband a few years prior to the start of the book, so he's a widower? You get what I'm saying. And it follows Tyler, who is in his 20s, and he took a gap year from university because he really feels this need to reconnect with himself and to find out what he actually wants from life rather than what he thinks other people expect from him. Tyler is in a relationship that is also very unfulfilling to him. And Asha has this restaurant, which was his and his dad's husband's, which is reopening now. After many years, he feels like he's ready to go on with his life and to, make new friends and to go on with the restaurant, get back to living his life essentially. And one of the people he hires to work on his restaurant is Tyler, and it is basically the romance between the two of them. This is a very cute book. It is taboo in the sense that it is age gap and that, Tyler works for Asha, but it honestly doesn't feel that taboo while you're reading it because it's so fucking sweet. It was so cute. The two main characters have vastly different life experiences and they come from very different parts of the town, and that very much plays a part in the story. Also, Tyler is black and Asha is white, and that also takes a role in the story. So if you are not up to reading about a white man learning certain things about race, don't pick this up. But again, read reviews by black people and black men specifically who appreciated the way it was done here. So do with that information what you will as well. This was just very nice. It was very cute. Also a very quick read. It's very short and I highly recommend it. It's cute. It's very cute. And now we get to the last section of the video, which is books by Brazilian Americans. There's only one here, which I'm so sorry about. I was only able to get to one before filming this video, and that book is The Worst Best Men by Mia Sousa. This follows Carolina Santos, who is known as Lina by her friends and family, which is not the most common nickname we would go for to someone called Carolina. Usually we would go for Carol, but I've seen it before. And she was raised in the US, so I feel like he gets a pass. Lena, some years ago, was about to get married to Andrew, but Andrew decided to ditch the marriage because of something his brother Max told him on his bachelor night. And he also left Max to deliver the news to Carolina. So obviously Carolina really hates Max. Years later, Lena is working with wedding planning and she really loves her job. And she gets this opportunity to start working with the Cartwright Hotel, which is this very fancy hotel. And Max works for his mother's marketing and advertising agency with his brother Andrew. The two of them are responsible for the marketing and advertising of the Cartwright Hotel. And long story short, Max and Lena are set to work together, competing against Andrew and another wedding planner for a position doing the wedding planning for the Cartwright Hotel customers. And the book follows a romance between Lena and Max. I really liked this book. It was very fun and charming, but I think my favorite aspect of it was Lena's relationship with her family. Her parents are Brazilian immigrants in the US and they met through a kind of network of Brazilian immigrants from the specific city the story takes place in, which I can't remember what it was. Lena's father is out of the picture and she was raised by her mother and her Brazilian aunts, and her family is just so fantastic. You know, the 3 Brazilian women who were responsible for raising all of those kids were such fantastic characters. They were so amazing, and the relationship between Lena and her cousins and her siblings, as well as, you know, the mothers and aunts and all that, was just so beautifully written. And it just felt so authentically Brazilian. And I am not a first generation Brazilian American myself. I mean, I'm not any type of Brazilian American, obviously. But the representation for all of that felt very authentic to me. I haven't found any Brazilian American reviews of it, so I can't tell you for sure. But again, Mia Souza is Brazilian American. There are a few Brazilian Portuguese mistakes in the book, but from what I can remember, all of them were from Lena, and she admits that she doesn't fluently speak Portuguese. I mean, she does a bit, but not 100% fluent, you know, so I think it gets a pass on that. And I do know that some people were bothered by the fact that the Brazilian culture that I showed in the book is, you know, carnaval, samba, futebol, soccer. I still get confused about that sometimes. Anyway, soccer, capoeira, pão de queijo, those things that are very stereotypically Brazilian. But I would like to remind you that the things that are stereotypically Brazilian are Brazilian things. And at no point in the story do Lena or her family try to make it seem like the only thing about being Brazilian and about Brazilian culture are those things. So I really don't get why people are bothered by that, to be quite honest with you, because all of those things are very important parts of Brazilian culture, whether you like them or not. And also, the book follows a Brazilian American character, so her experience is obviously going to be different from that of someone who is Brazilian in Brazil. Like, that's a no-brainer for me. I really like the moments the book talks about both the privileges and also the hardships of being a Brazilian American. Because, like, you have privileges over that of people who immigrated to the US and also over people who never left Brazil in the first place, because Brazil is a country in the global south. But at the same time, you also have very specific trials and hardships and marginalizations that come with being a Brazilian American. I really liked how the book tackles both of those, just like I really liked the way that Like a Love Song did. I thought it was done in a very balanced and nuanced way, and I thought it was done very well. I also really liked how we talked about certain aspects of Brazilian culture in a very contextualized way. Like, there's this moment where the characters are in a capoeira lesson and the instructor talks about the history of capoeira, how it was a martial art created by enslaved Africans in Brazil that could be disguised as dancing. It really talks about the history of it and the context in which it was inserted in, which I found fantastic. It also talks about Latinx stereotypes, and Lena, the main character, is not only Brazilian but also black. So two intersecting marginalizations characterizations. I really liked the way it was explored in the book, and yeah, the romance was good, don't get me wrong, but I felt like it wasn't the best part of the book. You know, I really just liked the relationship of the family a lot more. But I really like Max. He was very sweet, and I really like him. I listened to this on audio too, and as this is a dual POV novel, there are two narrators. The one for Lina is the same one from The Air You Breathe, Rebecca Mozo, and the narrator for Max is called Wayne Mitchell. Now, again, really liked Rebecca Mozo's part. I think she's very good with, you know, the emotions and the voices and all of that. I think she's fantastic, even though her pronunciation of Brazilian words isn't 100% right all of the time. But Wayne Mitchell, I have a hard time kind of grading his narration, because I found that he did a very good job with Max and with Andrew, but he did a bad job of everything else, especially the voices of the female characters. The way he did women's voices was just so fucking annoying and just bad. And I don't know how you managed to make someone's voice feel offensive, but it felt offensive to me. I just really didn't like that. I really didn't. But even then, I still felt like the audiobook was the way to go with this one, because I tried reading it physically last year. And I don't know, maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace for it at that time, but it really didn't work that time. And when I picked it up on audio now, it went really well. And I really liked the experience overall, even though Wayne Mitchell got on my nerves so much. Oh my fucking god. I ended up giving The Best Man 4 out of 5 stars. It was a very enjoyable read. I liked the romance. The smut was decent. And I adored the way Brazilian experience and culture and, you know, immigration and everything else was explored in the book. I thought it was really well done. And now, before I go, I would just like to tell you the titles of a few books, Brazilian books, that are on my radar that I haven't read yet. We have Child of the Dark by Carolina Maria de Jesus. This was translated by David Sinclair. I lied before. This one I actually did read before, but I read it in Brazilian Portuguese. I haven't read the translation yet. And I want to reread it in English to be able to talk to you about the translation. Then we have Angola Jung, Kingdom of the Runaway Slaves. This is a graphic novel written and illustrated by Marcelo Zaletti, and it was translated by Andrea Rosenberg. The Brothers, written by Milton Raton and translated by John Gladson. The Seamstress, also by Francis de Pontes Peebles. This one I'm very excited about. There's also a movie adaptation of it out with a couple of Brazilian actresses that I adore. So I want to read the book and watch the movie. I'm very excited about that. By Any Means Necessary by Cam Montgomery, a Brazilian American author. And Calling Me In by Natasha Diaz, a half Brazilian, half Liberian, I believe, American author. So yeah, I plan on reading those at some point in the near future, and eventually when I read all of them I will come back to do another video like this for you. I hope you liked this video. I hope you got some decent recommendations from it. Let me know in the comments down below whether or not you've read any of these books or if you're interested in picking them up. And please consider reading Brazilian books and books by Brazilian authors, not only right now during Latinx Heritage Month, but all year round, really. We really have fantastic literature and so many amazing voices, so many amazing stories, and I believe the entire world should be reading it, honestly. I think everyone only has a lot to gain from the entire experience, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, please consider supporting a Brazilian author and giving a Brazilian book a try. I feel like this was a bit messy, a bit all over the place, and I definitely didn't go as in depth into some of these books as I would like to have done, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment and subscribe if you feel like it, and as always, I'll see you around.